Witty, thought-provoking, and uplifting, Southern Soul Livestream is a program that you'll invite your friends over to watch every week, where you'll learn about interesting guests and get to share in their fascinating experiences. Tune in each Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern to connect with guests from across the generations and to laugh with our eclectic hosts who are as charming as they are talented. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's our host, Calvin.
Tonight's a very awesome opportunity for me. As you know, with COVID and everything's going on, there's been a lot of people who's been asking questions. They've been asking questions like, hey, what's going on with the education system? They've been asking questions such as, what is going on with this thing called, learning loss? Then you hear people say, learning loss, what's that? And then they're like, no, there's no such as learning loss, it's learning gain. And then, I couldn't even call it. I said, you know what? The best I can describe it, there is a whole lot of political energy when it comes to the education today. And I don't know if it's real or made up, but often said, when I was in school, things were a little different. Well, I don't know if they're different. I don't know if they're the same. What thing I do know is we have an expert here tonight. We have Miss Eno Richardson, education consultant, here to break it down for us tonight. And let me just kind of read a brief bio, just so you guys can know her background and what she's going to be talking about. Eno Richardson is a former assistant principal, teacher, and the current founder of Eno Richardson Consulting. She has been an educator for over 11 years, and 10 of those included school based experience. She is a fervent about reading and the ability for books to transform the minds and the lives of children. She believes that reading is, and I quote, the great equalizer. She earned her bachelor's from Vanderbilt University and obtained her master's of education from Vanderbilt Peabody College of Education. Thank you guys tonight. Thank you, Eno, for being here. I'm excited for you to be here tonight. Hello and welcome.
Hey, Calvin, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I love bios, I love intros, but I'm also curious about you. Is there anything, that your bio, didn't tell us? For example, what's your origin story? How did you get into education? Were you always education excited? But tell us about you.
Yeah, and hey, everybody. So glad to be here with you. So I actually went into school. I'm sure many people have some kind of, experience going into school for one thing and changing along the way. But I went to Vandy as an undergrad thinking, with pre-med on my mind. I was like, oh, a doctor, that's a great job. I have immigrant African parents, and so just like one of those checklist items as a good job for a kid. And so I went through that, but just throughout my journey, I shadowed doctors and realized that that really wasn't the type of interaction I was looking for. I shadowed a pediatrician. I was like, I'm looking for more, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So I ended up deciding that I didn't want to go into medicine. No, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I dropped pre-med and I had minored in child development with a major in double major in child development, medicine, health society, minor in Spanish. But anyway, along the way, I ended up doing an alternative teaching program called the Nashville Teaching Fellow. I thought that that would be something, that'd be temporary until I really figured out what I wanted to do. But I fell in love with education through that program. I learned a lot about the disparities in education through that program, and I just became hooked. And teaching, particularly in areas that serve Black and Brown kids or children from low socioeconomic backgrounds, which mimicked my upbringing. So I really fell in love with that. And I've been doing all of my education in Nashville. So that's where I've been teaching in the public schools, charter schools here in Nashville.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I really enjoy preparing for this session. As I get prepared for a session, I do research. And as a parent, I've often heard there's all kinds of nuance to schools and education and teachers. But all I could really realize is that what I've been going through over the last 3 years. My
Mm,
son started kindergarten, public school,
mm,
during COVID.
yeah.
And it was crazy, right? And it's like there's no face to face, there's no getting to know a teacher, there's no in the building. But as I began to prep for this, I began to have a OMG moment. I was like, wow, all of this is going on. So tell us, what do you consider the top, I guess, hot topics in education today? And, if you don't mind, give us the context of, because I think it's important to let everybody know that you're an education consultant and why these, top five, or top, challenges in education, the hot tops in education are important to you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And kudos to you for getting your son through kindergarten, through virtual learning and the pandemic. I had the privilege and the experience of, transitioning my school as an assistant principal through virtual learning through the pandemic. And so it was a lot for everyone involved, teachers, parents, students, and so kudos to you. And I can only imagine your kindergartner, your first experience with school and having to do it virtually. Um, so the hot topics, the big issues in education have been there. They're really many of the same ones that have been there for years. But I will say the pandemic, COVID really exacerbated some of these issues. And so I would say, number one, of course, if you all are paying attention to headlines, news, even maybe some of your schools or your community schools have been impacted by, this kind of gap in teachers retention, teachers leaving the job. Some teachers, didn't come back after COVID. So there's just a huge gap in just having educators in schools, particularly in public schools. So that's a big one. Of course, my passion is around urban education. And so the gaps between how students from Black and Brown communities, particularly underserved communities in those schools, perform compared to their more affluent peers. There's definitely a huge gap there. So I would say those are two of kind of like the big ones. And of course, teacher and student mental health. That's a newer one, or at least, getting more attention in light of COVID and the pandemic.
Thanks for sharing that. Let's dig into that first one you mentioned, because this one actually, I don't know if it surprises me, but it really makes me think. What do you feel is leading to? What's some factors leading to the nationwide teacher shortage?
Yeah, I mean, there are several factors, but research and studies lead to about three trends. The first one is just teacher leadership relationships, particularly with their principals. There are studies that show that the New Teacher Project did a study, and that really showed that most teachers who leave the profession say that they would have, or left the school, say that they would have stayed if their principal just ask them to, So that kind of leadership, communication, accountability, that's one bucket. There's also another bucket where it deals with policies and teachers feel like they've lost autonomy. Now that I will say has definitely been exacerbated by the pandemic. And on top of that, about 20 years ago with the No Child Left Behind initiative, schools became under a lot of pressure to produce data, to make sure kids are moving. And so things became a little bit more streamlined. So there was more uniform curriculum. So teachers kind of started to feel like they weren't having as much autonomy and creativity. So that's been another one that has definitely led to this kind of teacher retention, the lack of teacher retention.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting for me because, if I heard the headlines over the years, it's always been, it's hard for teachers or things are just, not fair. It seemed like maybe it could be a good thing. Maybe it could be helping the system correct itself. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think it's going to balance out, or what are your thoughts?
As as far as teachers leaving,
Yeah, like that. I guess the gap is the overall
yeah,
problem,
the
I
gap.
guess.
I think that it will definitely lead to new solutions that haven't
Mm.
been considered yet because of the increased amount. I think things are really coming to the forefront now. And so the numbers are higher than they've ever been. So I think that some solutions that I've read and seen about is, some schools are even cutting down the workday. There's been some schools just because they've, especially because they had teachers leaving because they were sick and COVID, but they were going to a 4-day school year, starting school later. So I definitely believe that it will balance itself out and that there will be novel solutions, new strategies being implemented to help bring balance to the education system.
Yeah, and I guess I can definitely hope for that because it sucks that it's happening this way, but it seemed like there could be an opportunity. Any thoughts on what can be done to kind of retain and support good teachers? Because I imagine there are good teachers being lost as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, there's one piece of like research speaks to the fact that when the district issues in the district is accounted for, that actually allows teachers to stay, particularly Black and Brown teachers. And so research shows that one, when students have teachers who look like them, especially Black and Brown kids, they learn more. There's increase in gains in their academics. These teachers, when the district issues such as policies and things that make teachers feel weighed down or decreases their autonomy, when that is corrected for, it actually keeps these teachers in the classrooms. So that's one. I think in a school level, just more accountability, more openness between principals and teachers can be really effective. I think, no one likes to feel like they're just, taking taking orders and just having to check things off a list to appease the powers that be. But when principals are transparent, principals even help to be a buffer between all the initiatives that are coming from the districts and the CMOs, and really tell their teachers, what, there's a lot coming. Here are the things that are most important. Here's what I want you to focus on. It builds a lot of trust. And so that's another way. And then recently, some schools have been providing spaces for teachers to just have spaces within the school day and resources to be able to just work on their mental health. And that's an optional. So never, with all these things, you never want to force someone because then it takes the kind of autonomy out of it, but optional opportunities for teachers to really be able to just reflect and just take care of their mental health has also been impactful.
I like those solutions, and it reminds me, in corporate, I spent my career in corporate, and there was a phrase that good employees don't quit companies; they quit managers.
Yeah.
And it's kind of parallel what you're saying about this whole principal dynamic and how the principal's role can be pretty much a figurehead and a person that can help or hurt the situation. So it seems like there's definitely some opportunity to learn from corporate there. This is my
Mm-hmm.
favorite topic. Now, anybody who knows me, I'm always talking about learning loss. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about it because it's a topic that, as I looked into it, it meant something else. Then it was kind of repurposed during COVID. And I love your term. Your term, you called it unfinished learning. And I love that term because maybe it was a little less political, maybe it triggered less people.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the term because it really described what happened. For example, with my son, he's doing virtual learning and he's an only child. So what he really struggled with is the social part, the part where he learns through interacting and he's in front of a laptop for like 5 hours and they expect him to stare at this thing for 5 hours. It was a nightmare. Different
Mm-hmm.
tool, learning management system every 2 weeks. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I say that to say I love the term unfinished learning, that's created by the pandemic. But do you mind describing to us what that is and describing some of the issues that you've seen out there that schools are dealing with?
Yeah. So, and when I use, that's not a term I came up with. It's a term used really in the charter community where I've seen it. But unfinished learning, I think, like you said, like learning loss, all of that, there's, different outtakes on it. And the purpose is picking words that really uses asset-based, ideals around what a child can do. But with unfinished learning just literally speaks to the fact that students were in school one day, learning from their teachers, going through a curriculum, a pacing guide. COVID happens and schools are scrambling to patch it up as best as they can, but with the full awareness that students did not have the full experience that they would have had before the pandemic, right? So pacing guides might have gotten thrown out. The curriculum was watered down to just provide something for students to be able to do and kind of stay busy, but it wasn't, the teacher's full developed plans, the mode of execution. Of course, at our best case scenarios, students had all the technology they needed, teachers, felt comfortable with all the technology, and they were able to do their best to produce these lessons where they're used to producing it live in front of kids. That's your best case scenario. We know for many of our students, particularly when you're talking about in our public schools, urban schools, there were so many barriers to even students getting in front of a computer or in front to even start to access the material. So that's what we refer to as learning loss. It's just the amount of information, standards, curriculum, experiences that students did not get to finish because of the pandemic. So that's the unfinished learning.
Yeah, and I'm curious because, I've heard all kinds of things, such as, in Georgia, there were like thousands of students that were lost. They just quit. They gave up on school. One of my favorite stories is one day watching my son during, learning. And there's this one kid who wasn't at home. He was kind of at some place. I don't know where he's at, maybe the YMCA. And what he had to learn school was his parents' smartphone. So he's somewhere like a YMCA with his parents' smartphone trying to follow whatever the teacher and sit still. It was crazy. So I
Yeah.
I really believe that a lot of families just gave up on school. But with unfinished learning, it kind of makes me think, is there anything being done about it? Have you seen educators figure it out how they're going to, or are they going to say we just lost it and there's nothing to do? As a consultant, any suggestions or techniques that you're kind of using to help educators with?
Yeah. So some of the best, schools that I've seen, one, they're trying to spiral in some of that information while still having to move forward, right? So figuring out ways in their lessons where they can revisit material, even introduce a material that students didn't really get to be taught from the previous year while trying to reteach the new information. I've seen some schools, do offer summer school. I know Metro Nashville Public Schools here in Nashville did a whole summer school option after the 2021 school year to just kind of help students, to help catch students up. I've also seen, tutoring after school. So just different programs that either are fit into the school day or outside of the school day to help kind of close some of those gaps. Something that I, work with educators on and suggest to even families is reading. That's my passion. And I really do believe that the more students reading is just a game changer. And so it seems very simple and sometimes it can be overlooked. There's reading, but give me the cool gadgets or the cool, resources. And it's like, no, really reading, it's as simple as it gets, but it goes such a long way.
Well, since you manage reading, let's get into that because I love that phrase. You consider reading the great equalizer. Why is that? What does that mean?
Yeah. There's so much research out there that shows that the more a student reads, the more a person, adult, any of us, it doesn't just stop at school age, the quicker you are able to develop critical thinking skills, vocabulary. You learn so much from a book, even and unintentionally, right? Or just naturally, that just allows you to just excel beyond measure. Some of my favorite pieces of research around the impact of reading on a student shows that when despite income, socioeconomic background, students who read widely and frequently perform just as high, if not higher, than their more affluent peers. Why is this significant? Because one, the opportunity gap is real. We know that there are major disparities, created by the system, the nation we live in, that starts our Black and brown kids in a different playing field than their white peers. And so to know that by reading more, reading frequently, our students can actually achieve and grow at a level equal or higher to these peers is really astounding to me. So that's why I consider it a great equalizer. Of course, the more read you are, the more opportunities you have, the better your vocabulary, the better students who read widely and frequently perform better on ACTs. What does that do? It opens you up scholarships, more college opportunities. What's beneficial about that? More opportunities for better jobs, more experiences. So it's a great equalizer in that by reading and the knowledge and skills you gain through books, students who otherwise are at disadvantage, are able to rise to the same or higher levels than their peers who had a better starting place.
I love that term, the great equalizer. I'm just going to keep using it forever just because until I love it is that, nowadays we have a lot of books and you can ship books, right? And as long as the books are not destroyed, then kids in different countries and different places can get a book, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just such an awesome opportunity. So I love that phrase. How about this? The diverse selection of text. I think that's a movement or an opportunity that we've been seeing more of it. You know, and I remember once talking to someone, she was looking at me like my name was Malcolm X or something, just because I was like, yeah, I kind of want brown faces in the books. And
Yeah.
she's like, why are you so militant? And I'm like, I'm militant because I want brown faces in the book. Break it down for us. Why is
Yeah.
it important that, children have diverse selections of books?
Oh my goodness, there's so much work around culturally responsive teaching. That's kind of what that would go under. But basically, one, it's just good for kids. I mean, I think we can all kind of reflect. I like to do this activity when I present in front of teachers, is think about the first book that made you feel seen, right? A book that you read that made you feel seen. For me, sometimes I like to say Annie from the American Girls collection. It was like the first book that I remember reading that had Addie. It was the first book that I read that had a Black girl in front of it. And she was like a cute Black girl. And I was like, whoa, she looks like me. And I was maybe third, fourth grade. But books have the power to provide windows and mirrors into for children. So one, when you provide a diverse selection of text, students are getting mirrors into their lives. One, it affirms their identity because they get to see one, authors that share their experiences and background, protagonists that share their experiences and backgrounds. It's very affirming and empowering, which is really, really important that our students need. And unfortunately, when our students are not seeing, characters, authors that look like them, scientists, whoever, it's just kind of it widens, this kind of systemic racism, these racist policies, because it makes students feel like, oh, only these people that look like this are the smart ones, the valued ones. And it's like, no, there are many awesome Black and brown kids, and we are all awesome and amazing. We deserve to be seen and noticed. So mirrors, and then windows. And so in the same sense that a book can help a student's identity be affirmed, books can also provide windows of opportunity. They show them lives of other people and the possibilities. And in doing so, it's actually increasing the awareness of their world around them, creating a sense of empathy. I really like when I teach to, when I present to teachers or educators who teach in homogenous classrooms, whether it's like all white private, or, it's inner city, it's Black and brown. It's good for them to see books about, people living experiences that are different from their own, to kind of show them the possibilities.
Oh, I love it. I'm interested in the chat if people can put what is the first book that made them seen. I got a confession. The first book that made me seen was Where the Wild Things Are. I have no idea because that book is crazy. And I didn't even know how controversial it was, right? Until I got older, right? Because back when the book was published, it was this kid who was a little rebellious and he had attitude, right? You know, the thing that now we see all so common, but when the book was originally published, I think it was around the mid 50s, they were like, what? What's up with you writing a book about this child acting crazy, right? But where the wild things are is like my book, and I love it. And I read it to my son, and he's just kind of, I tend to act out all my favorite books, right? But I love that way you describe it. What was the first book that made you feel seen? And for some reason, it was that book for me. So I think that's awesome. Any recommendations for the people, right? And please, you know, I know you got awesome books around you, behind
I
you,
do.
but describe to us the books that you recommend and why for different reasons, because I can imagine
Oh,
different books for different reasons.
goodness, I have so many. So if we're gonna do like young adult, of course, I'm always going to pitch a great Black Latinx, author of color, because I just, I want people to read more of their books, and that one, if you're teaching or if you have Black and brown kids or, got nieces, nephews, whoever, you definitely want to make sure that they're getting an influx of those. So gosh, some of my favorite. So for Jason Reynolds, it's really awesome. I've got who do I have? Of course, you can't go wrong with some of your classics. So if we're doing classics, you've got Raisin in the Sun, Lorraine Hansberry. I've got Their Eyes Were Watching God, so definitely the classics. And speaking of the classics, many times you read classics, you'll read your Shakespeare, you'll read, your Fahrenheit 451, so there's a lot of students read classics, but they're like old white men, but they're also like really great classics written by Black people, Latinx people. And so that's always important to make sure that we are exposing our students to those. Yes, the bluest eye. Yep. Thank you, Chantel. Got that over here too. Toni Morrison. Yeah. So I would say some really fun like YA books. Right now. So I mentioned Reynolds. Oh, Elizabeth Acevedo. She's really awesome. Clap When You Land. She writes her books in prose, and they're really, really awesome. So that's my like YA picks. I would say for adults, if you're looking for something fun to read, I just finished. What did I just? Oh, of course, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. That's a really great book. Yeah, GIC has Transcendent Kingdom. That's really great. We were just talking about love songs by Kindred is a good one. Joyce just sent me that. It was a really good classic. Love songs by W.E. Du Bois. And of course, I don't read, I read a variety. So if, Where the Crawdad Sings, that's by a white author, but it's a really good book too. Midnight Library, so on and so forth. I will say my favorite genre, I will say professional development books, personal development books. I read so many of those. So I just finished The Shoe Dog. It's written by the founder of Nike. If anybody read that, I read a lot of fantasy. Yes, fantasy is awesome. Felt seen. Thank you, Mandy, for sharing that. Yeah, it's a good fantasy romance. One of my favorite romance is Pride and Prejudice, and that's a classic, Jane Austen, but it's like definitely one of my favorites. But Shoe Dogs by Phil Knight is a really great one. That was a really great personal development book. It's about the owner of Nike. Of course, you haven't read Michelle Obama's book, read that. Read Obama's book. It'll be really good for you. And yeah, so I could go on and on, but those are some of
I
my
love it.
the
I
Curious
love it.
Incident of the Dog in the Night. That's a good one. That's such a classic, and kids love that book too.
All of the good books, and you kind of take me back, right? One of the ones I read in school, which really I still remember to this day, and I don't know why, but what was that? I can't, Where the Red Fern Grows? I think that was a classic. Oh my
Oh,
goodness, I have no
yes,
idea. That book just totally just pulled me in. And
yes.
what was the book with? I can't remember the name of it. The one where it's a tree and it was stuff hidden in the tree,
Oh,
and
The
he's
Given Tree.
no, it
Was that
wasn't
The
the Giving
Given
Tree. It
Tree?
was the two kids who it was some mystery. I can't remember the name. But you
Mm.
know, another book that made me feel seen that really excites me now I think about it was I kind of read this one coming of age because I was coming of age. I was figuring out life, but Invisible Man.
Mm.
OMG, that book. I mean, I didn't understand people. I didn't understand all these dynamics, but the Invisible Man. I think was that Ralph Waldo. Who's that?
Yes.
Uh,
Yep. Exactly.
Ralph
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 Ellison.
Ellison, yes.
Thanks,
That
Chantel.
book, oh my goodness, that helped me understand all kinds of people, people who look like me and not look like me because I was that person, young, naive, so many whatever. But anyway, we'll geek out a little later on books.
The Hate
Let's
You Give. Yes, that's a good one, Kimberly. And then the Poisonwood Bible. So I haven't read that one yet, but I've heard such great things about it. I'm like, I love books. I'm over here like in the chat box, like, yes.
I love it. So let's let people know what you do and how they can find you because I want to ask one last question and then we'll kind of open it up for the audience. So based on all of these dynamics, right? Reading being the great equalizer, so many weird things going on in school. What are your tips for how, parents can, work with teachers to build better, strong relationships with teachers? Because the ultimate goal is the kids, right? Because the kids are really impacted by this stuff. Any suggestions on what we as parents can do to build better relationships, better, strong relationship with these teachers?
Yes, and that reminds me. So I mentioned three things when you asked the question about retaining teachers, and another indicator is culture, school culture. So school where teachers and students feel like they can work collaboratively. Teachers feel supportive, and they're like shared norms within the school. But so to your point around parents and teachers, that's huge. Parents are the students' biggest advocates, and teachers, are passionate about the students' education and just them as a whole being. A couple of things that I know really help is communication. So to a parent, I would say it really it's helpful to a teacher to just be able to communicate. And a tip is if you're busy, something that really helps when I was in the classrooms, I really love when parents were like, hey, email is the best way to reach me. Here's my email. They tell me at the beginning of the school year, and I would just put that in there and just have that as a note. Miss Morris, email, that's how I'm going to reach her. Or some parents would take text. So letting your teachers know if you do have so if a teacher's calling you and you're not able to pick up because you're busy or it's bad timing, instead of just kind of like never, not responding, just let the teacher know what you do prefer. Shoot them a quick text, anything like that really helps to helps to create like a strong bridge of communication. So that's like a tip I have for like parents is just really letting teachers know what type of communication works for you and then being responsive for sure. I would say for a teacher, like a tip that a teacher can do to really build relationship with parents is one, start off on a good note. So when the school year starts, let your first interaction with the parent be something positive that your student did. Whether you're just introducing yourself, sharing how excited you are, or sharing like something great the student did in class, anything like that. A positive message goes a long way. That way you're kind of establishing a relationship so that when you do need to have a more challenging conversation about a student behavior, grade, there's already kind of that basis. So that's like one tip I would give to a parent and one tip for a teacher.
Awesome, awesome. So where can the audience find you? We're going to open up for a couple, 2 to 3 questions from the audience, but if you don't mind, tell us about where they can find you and what type of work that you do.
Yeah, so at the Eno Richardson Consulting.com, and I'm also on Instagram at Eno Richardson Consulting. I do a lot of videos and share resources, reading related. What I do is I work with schools, I work with educational organizations and companies. If you're like trying to start a summer program, you can reach out to me. But my focus is to use coaching and reading to really support schools, educators to close the opportunity gap.
Awesome, thank you. And Tamika is always crafty. She's put
Yeah,
your
thanks,
contact information
Tamika.
in the chat. So let's do a few questions from the audience. Feel free to type your question in the chat. What questions do we have for Eno?
Risa, did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. I would love to hear about if you have any insights into this massive donation Michael Bloomberg just gave to the New York City charter schools this week. And I just was really blown away that it was given to the charter schools and like not to the public school system, and what that means for the rest of us across the country. Like, is this a sign that there's going to be more money put into charter schools? I've brought my son up through public high school, on purpose. So anyway, I'd love any insights you have on that. If not, totally understand because it was just announced this week and I'm still trying to get my head around it. Thanks.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm not familiar with that, but I'm going to read into that because I'm very curious. I will share a little bit of what I do know about New York and charter schools because I do work with some schools in the New York North area. I do know that they have a way bigger, and like charter schools, we're here in this, and I'm not sure, Risa, if you're in the South or not, but in the South, charters are like more of a minority group of schools. Up north, New York, Massachusetts, those areas, they have like almost some places like a 1-to-1 ratio of charter to public schools. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. In addition, so charters are also public schools, right? So they are all considered public, but to your point around the way funds are worked, charters can receive private donations or like funding. And so I don't know if Bloomberg, I have no idea if like he tried to give it to the state and that couldn't work because of like the way this public schools were set up. But so those are just some of my kind of thoughts around what could have happened there.
Awesome. We have a couple more questions. Kimberly says she just quit today, so definitely interested in what she's saying. And then Samara, is it Samara? She has her hand up. What question do you have? You can.
Hi, it's Samara. You said it right the first time. And I greatly appreciate that because people always mispronounce my name. I wanted to say, or my question would be, I'm an educator, and I have the biggest struggle with trying to get my students to read books. I think social media has taken up so much that they're really not interested in reading as much. They want to know things, but they don't want to take the time to read them. And you have so much technology that, to me, I think it affects with some of their, I guess, ownership of reading, because you don't even have to know how to spell. You can press the microphone or ask Siri, a lot of things. So I'm trying to find out what would be some ideas and ways to have your students that don't normally read become more engaged, and even with the parents, because we even have programs called Books for Keeps, and the students get 12 free books, every grade level, every year at the end of the year, 12 free brand new books that they get to go and pick out themselves and that they could read over the summer to keep them reading. I just came from a workshop this evening, that's where I'm driving home from now, to engage parents in regards to how they can help their child, read more, and then was a program that they get the free books, and the participation for that was low. So I'm just trying to find ways to get the children to truly understand how much their mind can grow, how much more knowledgeable they are when it comes to books. And it's just like pulling teeth, not just to get them to read, but even comprehend what they're reading. I have my students, they read even the current story in the textbook, and they read it, but then they can't answer any questions because they just kind of read it, but they didn't really engage in the story. So do you have any suggestions for me as a teacher to give to the parents or even in the class to help the students to enjoy the love of reading? Because I tell them, I wish I had time to read, but I said personal reading. I got a lot of required reading. I would love to just sit back and have a chance to read. You assign them to read for homework, and they don't even take 30 minutes. And this is
Awesome. So Samara, she was breaking up a little bit, but I think we got the gist of her questions. And you were breaking up a little bit, Samara, but I think we can respond to your question. Go ahead,
Yes, I'm just reading this message in the chat box too. So that's a great question. I love that question because that's my jam. I love supporting schools and educators to get students to read more. But yes, your pain points definitely resonate. There's more competition out there for technology and all of that. But books are just as exciting and more powerful than they've ever been. I tell kids all the time, like, I promise you, once you get hooked on like a good book, it'll be better than your favorite Netflix series, So, so I would say a couple of like quick strategies you can try is one, to incentivizing students to read. That's just like an extrinsic incentive, right? So that they can at least start access. And many students just need to, they'll say, I don't like reading, or it's boring, because they haven't found something that they really enjoy. So one, really recommending books based on their interest to them. So sometimes you can do like an interest survey, find out what's your favorite movie, what's your favorite video game, TV show, and use that to kind of recommend books. And if you don't know, I like Minecraft and what books work for that, you can also kind of like Google and things like that. You can use other students to recommend, but kind of using their interest to recommend books. Students are more likely to read if, this is like a special book that came from their teacher, that opens them up, because what we want to do is just get them to fall in love with their first book. Then it's just like kind of magic from there. So that's one where recommendations through interest surveys, find out their interest of pairing them up with a book, and then incentivizing. So for some students, they may not read because they have to, but they'll read it if it's like, read 10 books and you get X prize. And of course, that's not the long-term solution, but that at least allows them to start looking and trying out books. And so incentivizing with some kind of rewards, and it can be free things like you get to be the line leader, or a homework pass, or a shoe pass, or a hat pass, whatever. Or, you can give them a bag of chips, or, kids love all those types of things. But some type of incentives for finishing books allows them to at least start like trying a book. And then before they know it, they start to build some of those intrinsic motivators, because they find themselves enjoying a book, even though initially they did it for the reward. So those are two examples. I have many more. On my Instagram, I actually have a video series, if you scroll down, called 10 Reading Catalysts. And it's like 10 strategies, and it comes with like tips and tools on ways that you can motivate students to read there.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Eno, for that. And I love what you said as I wrap up and we transition, is that it reminds me of a part of the excitement in getting my son to read. I remember him getting excited about winning the awards of, how many people read the most books. But two things really stick out to me when he began to read what I consider his first large books. Similar to what you said, I figured out, of course, he loved Mario Brothers. He loved games, but then he loved the classic characters, Mario and Sonic. So I got him this huge 30-year anniversary encyclopedia picture glossy of Mario. I didn't realize Mario has like 1,000 characters. He now knows all of the characters. So then we did something recently where we were watching the movie Turning Red. And while we were at the bookstore, he and I saw that they had a book with no pictures in it of Turning Red. He is now actively reading that book with excitement because Turning Red is one of his favorite books, second to Encanto, right? So, those are a few things that I've used that are very consistent with what you said. And you're right, it works because I was able as a parent to understand that survey of what excites him and to connect the dots with books that had exciting information in it. So, thank you for being here tonight. Looking forward to chatting with you soon. Watch your email tonight. You get a surprise for being a speaker here tonight. Look forward to working with you soon. And we're going to transition to our next speaker. Tonight, we actually have a double feature. So if you are a nerd, an academic, highly educated, highfalutin, then we have a solution for you. Also known as nerdy by nature. I love that. I'm only claiming it just because I love that term. Because I was that kid who was on the bus, going home, reading a bunch of books, right? But then, it's so fun when I was here, just chopping it up with Dr. Chantel Nicolas about what she does. So, I want to kind of read a little bit about her. Well, in fact, let me find, I'm going to find your bio because it's not in front of me. So here it is right here. Dr. Nicolas is a published Ph.D. chemist with an extensive background in multidisciplinary research. She understands the unique challenges that STEM professionals face, and she uses her insights and business acumen. I love that part. Her insights and business acumen to guide her clients on their journey to become entrepreneurs. Check this out. This is a really beautiful bio right here. From idea development to implementation of a business model to marketing approach, Dr. Nicolas drives mission critical information to ensure a successful business launch. All that to say, as I was talking to her, she's like, no, 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 I don't just coach people in business. I help them get started from day one. Y'all, welcome Dr. Nicolas. Dr. Chantel Nicolas, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being so patient.
Thank you. And thank you for loving the nerdy by nature thing. Thanks you for reminding me of that. I really love it too. So many of us are. Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Awesome. I love your background. And I tell you why I love your bio. Because as I read it, I see a bunch of things that are like oil and water. Me being an engineer myself, and I'm really, really good with the bits and bytes, zeros and ones. But I remember being in the computer lab designing computers, and, I'd be talking too much, and people staring at me like, why are you talking so much, right? But a lot of people don't realize that these personalities things. But before we get started, let's dig into you. What's your origin story? Tell us about you, how you came to be, like where you went to school, what you do, what you're passionate about. Tell us about you.
All right. So let me know if I missed anything. So I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and like I'm a child of immigrants. I'm a child of Haitian immigrants in particular. And I went to college in New York. Went to Barnard College, Women's College, in New York City. Majored in chemistry, which I loved in high school, by the way. I know a lot of people are like, "What? High school's where I decided that chemistry was not for me," but I got lucky. And from there, because I had a great teacher, from there I went got my PhD in chemistry from Clark Atlanta University in Georgia, and then I went and did a postdoc in North Carolina at the EPA. And so I went from being a bench chemist, from doing research in undergrad to a cosmetic chemist to a computational chemist, and my career focus has been for a long time using my data science skills. So I'm also a coder, using my data science skills to see if we can guess at whether or not certain products could, cause problems in humans in the environment. So that's like my work hat. That's been my work hat for a long time.
You know, Thank you for sharing it. And I also love that you're also a new mom, right?
Thank you. He's right here laying down.
Yes, I mean, one thing I love that fascinates me about new moms because, certain new moms, they have that baby and they be right back to work. I love it, right? As you rock the baby, as you interview tonight, it is so awesome and so beautiful. Tell me this, when it comes to PhDs, right? You're a PhD, you know PhDs. Why do you feel that certain PhDs have, great potential to become entrepreneurs?
It's interesting, Calvin. I read those articles that you were researching that where people wrote about why they thought PhDs would be great entrepreneurs. There were some good ones on there, like they're great at researching and all that. And I think a couple things that we don't realize is besides the research, we are good salespeople because PhDs, and even if you have a master's degree and you've written a dissertation, and some of you bachelors are nerds from the beginning. You've probably written some kind of a thing like that for your BS as well. But you've had to sell yourself, right? And prove to a cater of elite professionals that you belong, that you have a contribution. So I think from the beginning, you learned how to sell yourself. And on top of that, you're able to manage tons of information, people from the past who've published ahead of you, your current colleagues and what they're working on, the people you're mentoring. And then on top of that, to say, how do I carve out a space for myself that's not copying what another scientist has done, assuming that there is nothing new under the sun? How do I make a name for myself? And when you think of that and the fact that you have to create content in a matter of like publishing in journals and writing books and whatnot, I mean, you have the trifecta. You have a salesperson, someone who actually creates content, who could do email marketing, podcasting, filming, or whatever. And then on top of that, they have a niche market, right? Who's willing to listen to them and, who's buying it, right? So I just think that we've developed those skills in addition to project management and all those other awesome skill sets that we develop as nerds in the academics.
It's so funny because I agree with you, and it's like I never realized it until I started researching for this show and this topic is that those things are very true, right? Because I typically saw, the PhDs, the nerdy type, they're just kind of over, they're the Back to the Future awkward types. But I never really saw those skills, right? Until I was like, yep, because I often tell people that I wear three hats. I wear producer, as I'm
Hmm.
going through the shows, I'm figuring out the shows and what it's going to be. I wear marketer, where I'm taking a message and I'm trying to figure out how do I package it, right? And
Hmm.
then I do CEO, where I'm like, and hey, how do you run a well-oiled machine? And it's these different hats that you wear that a lot of times it's one person doing one of those things, but you have to be able to switch and be like, hey, I need to make an executive decision. Well, wait a minute, I need to do a creative. And those are definitely left and right sides of the brain that a lot of people aren't accustomed to. But that's the good part. How about the challenges? What are some, as you see, I like the word nerdy types because that's a part of your business, right? What's your website
Oh
again?
yeah. Nerdstartupincubator.com.
Nerd Startup Incubator. So it's a term of endearment, right? So it's affectionately we call this the
Oh
nerdy types. But
yeah.
what are some challenges do you see with
Yeah.
these highly degreed professionals when it comes to starting their own businesses? What are some challenges you see?
Well, first thing is we have to change and shift the way the word nerd is looked at. I feel like nerds are dynamic professionals. We have different types of things that we quote unquote nerd out about that we know a lot about. And we love to distill that information to whomever is interested in. And I just love how people are saying that they've been traumatized by chemistry since high school. That's where it happens, isn't it? But the challenges are one, thinking that your degree has to define what you do as an entrepreneur 100%. um, and that the 9 to 5 model needs to be what you pursue when you become an entrepreneur, meaning that you're still going to be charging for your hours. And as a scientist, as a chemist, I can tell you, we can all say that that experiment doesn't work for a lot of us, right? A lot of us who have lots of different skills and have busy lives, 9 to 5 lives, full time everything. That doesn't work for us. So it's really a mindset shift to say, wow, I don't just have to get paid for what people think that I only know, right? Some people have these natural gifts, and let's nerd out and say superpowers that, they don't have a degree in, but they would love to sort of infiltrate that as an entrepreneur. So I wish more nerds knew, more highly degreed nerds knew that they didn't have to necessarily do exactly what they're doing for their 9 to 5 unless they were incredibly passionate about that in a business. That's a big challenge. And another challenge is, I would say is, dare I say, is being willing to get out of your head and not just be behind the scenes as the person who's like just imagining someone in the lab or in a library working with their head down. And a lot of us do have personality, and a lot of us are like, well, my significant partner, other knows that I'm crazy, that I'm fun, and my family knows this side of me. But dare I venture out and let people know that I'm not just the person, an introvert, or just someone that is like super conservative. Dare I pop out with color? Dare I laugh out loud in public? So I think the challenge is being able to be their authentic selves. And I know that that might be a little deeper than maybe we want to go, but I think that if we tackled the 9 to 5 mindset and the ability to live loudly or to live as yourself, in public, or for people for whom it matters, I think it could have a lot of folks like us shifting our minds from 9 to 5 mindset to CEO mindset.
Wow, I love that answer, and even though it's deep, it's beautiful, right? Because what you described is the essence, right? And I like what you describe it. It's like this shift, this mind shift, where PhDs are in my mind. It's like they kind of really hone in on this laser focused topic, and they become good at this thing, right? But it's like, as you said, what it means to be an entrepreneur or a business owner may not be that thing. that you spent so much time focusing on and becoming good at. So it's almost like a opening process. And I can see as you working with your clients, how you helping them open up, right? In fact, that's how I heard about you. One of your clients was like, hey, she's kind of awesome, right? So I'm thankful that, she connected me with you. But tell me, what do some of your clients say about your work? Clients that you have helped, what have they said about you? These people that you've kind of helped along that process.
I have one client that I like to use as a case study, but I have several. And the reason why I like her in particular is because, she had a really great course. Her course was, she basically is an instructional design coach. So she helps people who distill information, like teachers, make that more accessible to people who otherwise may not know that that course is for them. So let's say someone who's a non-minority instructor, make sure that that course or the information is more accessible to someone that looks like me, for example, right? So making them better teachers, like that, which is really good for the world, right? So she had developed a course and she was looking to fill out all of her seats and like how do you get more people into your seats? You don't have a mailing list, right? So we worked together and I coined, and I'm not going to say what it was, but I coined what we would call her peeps, right? The people that she's interested in. And so she developed a social media post around that, and hundreds of people responded to her. Not only did she fill the seats of her course, but she had tons of leads for people to work with her in the future. And then through that process, she was able to refine her product, right? Her product wasn't perfect from the beginning, but now she's at a place where she's charging, I would say 5, 6, 7 times what she charged before, right? So all of that was because she was willing to venture out and at least see what she had to give to the world. So I really love working with her. And one of the things that she likes to say is, you want to work with me if you are ready, to stop being limited by your genius, right? And ready to start sort of expanding beyond the confines of, academic and corporate structure, right? To really start to think of entrepreneurship as a way to not just make money or to have another job, but to really be yourself while you're making impact.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that is a great case study customer. I mean, I can see you actually physically writing a case study on this customer because it's obviously she gets it, right? She
She
gets it,
gets it.
that she was in her own way. And I can see how your coaching kind of helped her get out of her way. And I love that of that experience of how she was able to tweak her messaging so much so that in being herself, because in being herself, she knew what her people look like, right? She knew what her peeps were like. She just had to, as they say, name it and claim it. So I love that
Name
beautiful
it and
story.
claim it and
Name it
let
and
them know
claim
you
it.
exist. Yes.
Yes, she named it and claimed it with your guy, and I love that because that's beautiful because I know what it's like to be in that moment and you're just kind of stuck, right? And I call somebody like, "Hey, I need some ideas," right? And you really just need some help getting unstuck. So kudos to you for that. Uh,
Thank you.
one last question. Well, a couple more questions before we kind of open up to the audience. Um,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts about entrepreneurship? Like, I'm kind of, curious about how you got started. Are you like really big into just diving head first and going in full entrepreneur, or just kind of trying it out a little bit? What's your take? Any suggestion, recommendation, your personal story?
Well, I can tell you for me, I've always I had a thing where I was afraid to actually venture out. It was always like the dream fantasy, dare I out myself and say that I always wanted to have in my own business because I always knew the 9 to 5 model meant possibly 40 plus years working the 9 to 5. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. So it became a matter of if I could run the greatest experiment of my life, where I can make money on my own terms, make the greatest impact and live my best life, and it worked, what would that be? And how do I work myself towards that? Once I figured out what my business idea was, believe it or not, I sat on it because I thought it was crazy. And so I'm here to say that if you have incredible ideas, don't sit on them. Talk to someone, talk to me if you like, so that we can think about your path to getting there. It's okay to have big ideas, but how do you figure out where to start? That's what I help you do, especially to have an evidence-based approach. That was another thing. How do I know that people will like it? Well, how do you use an evidence-based approach as a scientist, as a nerd, to know if what you have exists? I help you do that. But honestly, for a long time, I was scared. I was scared because I said, this will mean, if I do this, it means that I have to come out of, my comfort zone. I think of some of the books that like Shonda Rhimes' Year of Yes, right? She had to break out of her comfort zone, and she's a dope writer, but she still had to break out of her comfort zone out, in order to relive her life fully. So my biggest challenge was sitting on it and not seizing the opportunity to grow that significant amount of growth then. Now, when you talk about jumping in, there are ways to get into entrepreneurship, and I don't recommend 100% like quit your job. Someone said that they quit today. I'm not sure if they meant that they quit their job, but kudos to you if you did. But if you can think of your job as something that requires your business something that requires seed funding, then maybe you want to keep your job. Maybe the idea is to create a business that fits around your busy lifestyle, so that if it can take over, it's as far as replace your income. Well, guess what? You know for a fact that you can work it 15 hours a week and make enough money. Isn't that great? You may not have to work 40 hours to like get what you were making before. So I like the idea of you transitioning into it, experimenting with what works. We all know that we have to experiment because there's never like one strategy that fits everyone, right? So giving yourself the time to develop what it is that you're doing, develop your product, your ideal product, who your ideal client is, all that takes time. So give yourself some time to get into the water and learn how to optimize the time that you have. That's what I would say.
Awesome. I really enjoy that because, I've tried it both ways. And I would say one way, jumping all in, is extremely stressful. And the reason why it's stressful is because you're like, how am I going to pay the bills? Right. And that's real, right? Mortgage, it don't matter how much money you make, it want to be paid every single month, right? And entrepreneurship
Yes.
can be like you make money sometimes you don't, right? And when you got corporate, it's like you get paid no matter what you do or whatever. So I like your response. I also like, and I can tell, Eno also love your evidence-based approach. Because as you were talking, I was kind of feeling your story out. You use your core skills to launch your own business. You're like, oh, because I love data, and then I can test these theories, and I can do this thing, and then I use evidence-based approach. You see, so if you're picking up what she's putting down, people, she's giving you the secrets of how she do this. She don't just say, hey, do it. She goes off, she does some research. And then she's gonna measure them, and then she's like, no, don't do that. Yeah, do this. You see, and I love it, right? Because if you pick it up what she's putting down, she's using her God-given talents, her gifts, to push and support her entrepreneurship, and she's sharing that with you guys. So I love that. What we're going to do is open up for a few questions because I think someone in the audience may have a question for Dr. Chantel. Who do we got? What questions do you have? How about that lady who quit today? She working on being an entrepreneur? Who is that? That was Kimberly. Did we lose Kimberly?
Yeah, Kimberly's not on anymore.
I was getting ready to get all up in her biz. Okay.
Yes. I think
Someone
she's a
said, what
teacher.
generation is picking up what she's putting down? I know, right? What generation is that?
Oh, picking up what she's putting down.
That's a disco generation.
Yeah, I like to be E, all the above. Let's see,
Mhm.
what questions?
And as you guys think of questions, I want to add something else.
Yeah, please share.
I think it's fantastic when we have great ideas and we want to go on Shark Tank. Eventually I want Nerd Startup Incubator to be that, right? So I meet so many amazing professionals who are like, look, I have this incredible idea that I want to get funded. And I wish I could fund it for them, right? I'm like, first of all, you're a dope professional. You know what you're talking about. Who's going to believe you other than another nerd like you that you know what you're talking about, which is fantastic. But what I like to encourage people to do is, hey, what if you didn't have to delay entrepreneurship because you're waiting for someone else to fund your idea? What if you a lot of us don't realize we have ideas already, that we can solve problems already. And that if we just thought about it, there is something that we can create for others that can be a huge help that we can get behind, get passionate about right now. So what if you were what if you in part funded your big idea because, you were able to create something that other people wanted? And what if you were able to create something digital, right? Which is, I mean, think about it. You can produce a million cajillion, right, digital things, but how many hours in a day do you have, right? I feel that so many of us have so many amazing, great ideas that if we just gave us the opportunity to think, then we would be able to create. And if we were able to create, we would change the world. And I think that's what is missing. More of us need to be thinking about how we can create something that changes the world.
Well, I love that because where you've equated is entrepreneurship to ideas. Great ideas leads to entrepreneurship. And I happen to know a lot of people who have great ideas. And like you said, they sit on those ideas. And I tell you another thing I noticed that hold people back. And I was going to mention this today when I was speaking. But I believe a lot of small business entrepreneurs get held back because they're so focused on making money on day one. They trying to get paid on day one. And I know people who have published 1,000 books and they still trying to make profit. But
Mm-hmm.
it's the ideas. And as they said last week, is you have to be patient. I could give you evidence of this. This evidence approach. How many people in the room
Okay.
use Google? Everybody. How many people have ever given Google any money? No, very few. So
Hmm.
how is it that Google makes all this money and nobody gives them money? It's because they started with an idea. And they said, hey, when people search for this one thing, they often search for this thing with it. So these two things, that's a pattern.
We're
So
going
they
to
had an
sell this.
idea and they learned how to make money, but they started by solving problems, just as you describe it. And I love that. Did we get any questions in the audience? Angela
Some
says she's just chatting. But yeah, she's like Google.
It's
She don't
Google.
like Google. She
She's going off on Google right now.
yeah, she probably building the
But
bunker right now. Keep going.
I love what you were saying then. It's like about, making money. First of all, if if it were that easy to make a lot of money as an entrepreneur, more people would be
Everybody be
entrepreneurs.
doing it.
Let's just put it out there. But when you talk about being a 9 to 5 professional, some of you are full-time parents or full-time caregivers, or full-time, you are the person at your church that they rely on to do audiovisual, right? After work or whatever. Whatever it is that you do, you don't have a lot of time in your day. So why spend your time doing something that's not going to be meaningful to you? You want to be able to pursue an idea that's worth fighting for, that's even worth failing for, because we hear the stats about businesses failing. Are you willing to experiment with something that you know might fail? And if you're going to spend your countless hours, very few hours working on it, it might as well be worth it. There's a book that I like, by MJ DeMarco. It's called The Millionaire Fast Lane, and it's not what you think. But it's like, if you can find a way to help a million people, even if you didn't get paid to help those million people, so what you're saying, Calvin, you can't lose. You're going to make money because you were able to impact a million people's lives. So think about it, whether it was directly or indirectly, if you could impact million people's lives through what you're doing, if you can find a way that can happen with the number crunching, then you're like, man, I might be onto something. So think about your impact. Think about how much time we have on this earth, and how everything is not, 100%, given, right? What would you do with your time? What's worth it to you to work on if it could work for you and work for other people at the same time? So I just really like for people to clarify, create, and commit to launching. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to launch. The commitment comes from the heart. It comes from the impact. It comes from you serving. Once you start thinking about other people and how you can serve, it gets really exciting. I mean, it causes you to do all kinds of things. It comes out of your comfort zone, right? And live loudly, as I said, they love that, right? And to really live in your purpose in business. I think entrepreneurship is one of the best ways to do it, because you get to do it on your terms. You get to help people that you want to help, and you get to build, literally create the life that you want. And um, how better to do that than through entrepreneurship? I mean, I know we have these great jobs, we've worked really hard for them, but let's follow the what if. What if you went after it and it really worked? Wouldn't it be worth the time, energy, and money you put into it?
Awesome. Yes, yes, indeed. Well, tell us, do you do like consultations, like, when you're just talking to people? Tell us about that. We gave them your website. They know how they can contact you. What does that engagement look like?
Well, yeah, so if you do head over to nerdstartupincubator.com, you get a chance to download my free guide, which is Nerd's Guide to Starting a Side Business, 7 things you need to do in order to start. So even if you don't know where to start, 7 steps to take, right? And so you can pretty much do that on your own. But I also have courses that help you if you are like, hey, I don't have time to work with anyone one-on-one, but I kind of want to do this guided, like without being really guided. I have courses that you can take that can help you figure out what your idea is and then work on it through the point where you have a whole strategy for transforming your ideal clients and then getting that evidence you need that your product works for people, that they want it and they will pay for it specifically from you, right? But I also have, complimentary calls with folks who feel that, man, that idea is at the tip of my tongue, or I'm in business right now and I'm having a challenge with lead generation, or I'm having a challenge with creating a product or a system that I can use that really fits into my lifestyle right now. I help you figure all that stuff out. And so I like to give complimentary calls, especially to kind of reward people for thinking, right? And trying to put great things out there. So if that sounds like you, then definitely get on my mailing list and reply to the email. Like you'll get an email with the download and just reply to the email. Let me know how, you found me, that, Southern Soul sent you, and I'll get you on my calendar so we can talk. Cause I'm just assuming that because you're listening right now that you probably are like, man, I really do want to get an idea off the ground. So you sound like someone that I love to meet. I just love to meet and shake your hand virtually. But yes, I do have one-on-one coaching that I offer to people who are really excited to get started, really are doing this because they have a purpose, right? They have purpose and they see that they can make an impact and they see the growth. People who think, wow, if this goes really well, I can build a whole empire. I like to help people who want to develop their visions that can make something, try to create something bigger than themselves and bigger than they ever even thought it could be. So those are the people that I'm passionate about working with, game changers. So if that sounds like you can reach me at hello@nerdstartupincubator.com as well. Or you can go ahead and get the downloadable and reply to that email. And I'll be
Awesome.
so excited to talk to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Chantel Nicolas, for being here tonight. We've had an awesome night. We started talking about hot topics in education. And Eno really, really shared with us what she does and how she sees some of the current challenges in our education system today. She helped me go from a parent that says, hey, this sucks, to being a little bit more empathetic or aware about, what's really going on. You know, I'm excited that we were able to geek out a little bit, kind of talk about books. She shared with me something that I, can appreciate. That first book that allowed me to feel like I was seen. And as I've been thinking, as other books have been popping out, and I definitely do agree with her about how getting children started early and reading books, it creates all of these gateways into life and windows into life and understanding of life. And I see that happening with my son. So kudos to her. And of course, Dr. Chantel Nicolas, nerdy by nature. Oh my goodness. Purpose driven change makers, people who have ideas, people who are trying to solve problems, people who understand that, hey, entrepreneurship ain't just a fancy word, it can be an avenue that I can build a lifestyle business or solve problems that I'm passionate about by helping a million people, which is how we got started here at Southern Soul. If you enjoyed yourself tonight, I want to let you know how you can support the team. Buy us a cup of coffee. Why? Why would you buy us a cup of coffee? Well, we actually are giving out all kinds of fringe benefits. For people who've already bought us a cup of coffee, 5, you get a special invitation to our free grant writing seminar that we're having in May. So what we do is we take care of our people. We take care of our donors, our people who find value in what we do. So as Tamika drops in the chat, how you can support the work we do, and we call it exploratory journalism. That's taking information that traditional news sources may not cover, but we make it more accessible to you in a way that Eno just broke it down. The way Dr. Nicolas broke it down for us. We take care of our speakers tonight, so make sure y'all check your inbox. So y'all know what I love to do is end the show by listening to some of my daddy's favorite records. So if you want to chill, listen to a few records with me, then do that. If not, I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for joining us at Southern Soul Livestream Talk Show. Join us weekly at soullivestream.com. If you're joining us live, we'll take a quick music break and then come back for a discussion with the audience.